and is believed. I don't know if the coin that I bought was one of the coins used by Saint Casper, but it was the same currency used by Saint Casper, and that's.
But did you buy it on eBay? Was it certified? It was like Thirsty Joe's Historic Emporium. Definitely a coin used by St. Casper. Remember, everybody, he is a Maltose fence hitter who is anti-war.
I have a bunch of friends, live in LA, lefty types, but I guess you would call them default liberal. Some of them are more politically active just because they work in media. And I remember having conversations with 6-7 years ago about the far left's hatred of Jews and Israel, and how I don't understand how.
Kind of weird and anti-Semitic you would lump those two things together, though, right? Because, like, first off, there is an incredibly big problem with the hatred of Jewish people, as well as anti-Semitism in the United States. But that's coming from your team, brah. That's coming from all the far right. Those are the people who are constantly doing horrifying hate crimes and shit like that. Those are the people who shoot up synagogues. Those are the people who fucking post manifestos online. All seems to be far right, sometimes far right viewers of your content. Yeah, that's the people who are doing that kind of shit, not the far left.
Like, you know, hey, look, you work in Hollywood. You're Jewish. You understand, you know, what's going on, but you're supporting these far leftists who are on video saying they want to eradicate.
What did you just fucking say? What? In the same breath? What the fuck? I mean, if you want to talk about people who spout that kind of shit, people you've had on your show, Nick Fuentes, yay. Those are the kind of people who are saying that kind of stuff. Yes, that there's apparently some mass media manipulation by Jewish people. That's anti-Semitism. That's an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory that has no bearing in reality. But here we are.
I'm not Israel. I'm not. Well, maybe it's a little strong language, but you had that video of Patrisse Cullors of BLM saying they want to end the imperial project called Israel. Like, what do you think that means when they say from the river to the sea? And these people are like, oh, no, I don't believe any of that. Well, it's a cold splash of water in the face right now.
Yes.
When you're seeing in Washington, they're chanting, there is only one solution. Intifada revolution. I want to make sure I get the full quote, but they'll try and downplay it and say, no, intifada just means we're going to come and revolt against the government. But everybody knows what one solution means.
Again, by the way, the right needs, like, you know, boogeymen, bad guys to be able to vilify. And, you know, they've been going after Antifa for a very long time, or the far left or the radical left, which don't hold material power in the United States. Like, there is progressives, there is sock dems, and they have been elected to a handful of positions. There are lawmakers for sure that have more progressive views and ideals, but in terms of far leftists, if you're talking just like an open and proud anarchist or an anarcho-syndicalist or a communist who like is now holding a position of power, I think the closest you might have is, you know, Shamaswant. That's about it. Who's an independent who's like an open socialist, but like otherwise they don't have material power. But they're always put in like, so you can now see the radical left have taken over. They've taken over America. I mean, Joe Biden is basically a cultural Marxist himself. They have been trying to implement communism in a variety of ways. And right now there's all these rallies where they are basically calling for the destruction of Israel. And it's like, nope. No, in fact, some of those rallies that you just mentioned, one of those was held by Jewish Voices for Peace, which is an organization of Jewish people who oppose apartheid and occupation. And they did, yes, get very large rallies, especially one in New York. They were not screaming for the destruction of Israel or for violence to happen to civilians. No, that's all just lies and fabrication.
Feminism, I believe, can only exist in what the United States has created.
Wait, what does this have to do with feminism? When did the feminist movement outright say they support Hamas? I don't remember that.
Yes.
It
is so safe. It is so protected. Women, go about your business. You are free. Whereas in the majority of the world, you see these stories of the women who go hiking in Morocco by themselves. Yep. And what happens? What we see now with...
Are you implying that women in Morocco, for unspecified reasons, are at more danger for being sexually assaulted? Because, wow, I mean, this has just been the first 2 minutes. There's been an unbelievable amount of concentrated racism going on here.
Hamas is a wake-up call to many of these lefty feminist types who supported BLM to realize these people hate you, they want to kill you.
By the way, this is the same thing that the right has been saying to queer folk since this whole thing started, you know, trying to use like the most disgusting like gotchas, like, oh yeah, fucking you support Palestine, you know what Palestine would do to you? Probably behead you, yeah, because that's what they would do, because yeah, so you say that you're pro LGBTQ, and then people are like, no, you're actually saying this to a gay person. But it's like, all right, fine, why in the world, if someone is, or an organization within an area, and one that has been branded a terrorist organization, who you are now saying speaks for everybody, speaks for the entire population. Half the population in Gaza is fucking kids, children. I don't think there is an overwhelming amount of them that are specifically thinking the worst things in their lives right now is the potential LGBTQ plus indoctrination. Don't think they're, you know, having the culture war discussions.
And if it was not for our security apparatus, yeah, you'd be living in a very brutal, cold reality.
And by the way, no mention ever of how Saudi Arabia treats LGBTQ plus folk. That just, again, important allies, though. Yeah, very, very important. Strategic.
I mean, this whole doctrine of, you know, multiculturalism, anti-colonialism, it was cooked up inside the West. And it was cooked up in a Western environment. And when you step outside that environment,
global anti-colonial movements entirely done by the West. I think a lot of them were in opposition to Western colonialism, I'm going to say, like if you look at the movement in Vietnam, for example. But yeah, go off.
and you apply it, you suddenly realize it means something totally different than what these sort of campus activist types think. So when you think, for example, about Hamas and this just the recent massacre, in some sense, it is even worse than the Nazis. And what I mean is not in scale, of course, but what I mean is the Nazis were sufficiently comparison. Western.
I have noticed it was the left that encouraged BLM, that encouraged these riots and
basically, I feel now, if you're just going to be a conservative pundit, you show up and you just come with the laundry list. You just show up with everything that you're mad about or have ever hated. You know, black liberation, black civil rights, indigenous liberation, indigenous civil rights, landback movements, stuff like that. And you just go through them all when something bad happens, and then you just attach them all to the same thing. It's like, yes, that was a horrifying and detestable attack on civilians by Hamas. How can we make this about liberal feminism and black people and trans people? Because they all are somehow involved in this. We just got to work on the angle there, you know? Drawing the lines on the chalkboard.
The attacks on the police, and all cops are bastards, and burning down police stations. They will always take the side of the barbarians. They're always on the side of the violent. And for the first time now,
calling them
barbarians. Hallelujah, in Israel, we see, oh my gosh, you're going to take the side of the civilized people this time. Your first time. I mean, of course, BL.
Historically, this is the very first time ever that liberals have, you know, supported Israel. That's never happened before, so it must be an interesting new world paradigm to have to deal with if you're conservative.
Supports Hamas. What did you think? And I can we get a list of the corporations and the celebrities that donated to Black Lives Matter, now all out supporting?
Sorry, what? Again, yeah, that if you're referring to the one tweet that was made on the social media account by, again, one person who's controlling a localized social media account for the Black Lives Matter Chicago chapter, that does not speak to the entirety of the entire Black Lives Matter movement, or people who just generally want to have more civil rights or fight for civil rights. Has nothing to do with them. But of course, yes, all of Black Lives Matter are also directly supporting Hamas because of that one tweet made by the Chicago Black Lives Matter Twitter account.
Supporting Hamas. I just hope that the pushback that happened so fast, so quickly, I hope it didn't happen so quickly. The diversities are saying, and sorry you guys, but white mans are really SOL.
Sorry, what? Diversities are strength. We're lied to about that one, first off, and sorry you guys. Oh yeah, someone who's not white is here. Anyways, white people are the ones suffering right now, okay? They're like, no one is having a worse time than white folk in general.
I'm actually mixed race, so I'm okay.
That is not going to count.
It's actually worse.
Too, yeah.
Yeah, I know. The anti-white racists will come for everybody, even mixed race people like myself. You know, I certainly, I'll fool them for a little while. I'm as white as they come, but eventually, you know, my family tree will betray me.
police chiefs, all the head of universities, all the heads of symphonies. I mean, read Heather McDonald's book. I'm constantly interviewing her on my Substack. She has this book, When Race Trumps Merit. And it's unbelievable how every important position in this country has been replaced by usually a black woman, especially at the universities. And
what? By the way, they're talking about Israel and Palestine right now. That's what the discussion's about. But sure, yeah, nearly every major position, especially amongst top tier positions amongst universities, has been replaced by a black woman.
BLM is deeply anti-Semitic, and I'm not saying that in any cute kind of way.
How about just anti-white, anti-American?
Well, for sure.
Again, citation needed. What are you talking about? Unless you're like a fucking white supremacist, which Ann Coulter is, 100% is, but unless you're a white supremacist, having people teach you about the history of white supremacy is not a bad thing. The only people who should piss off are white supremacists, who are like, I don't want to learn that. It makes me sound bad. Yeah, kind of. I mean, it'd be really weird if in the current age and day you were like, oh, that was actually great and I want to uphold that. It'd be better to kind of maybe learn from, our history.
Sure. But to these people who...
more important to me.
To many of these wealthy individuals...
Oh, yeah, we know. You're being extremely white right now. White victimhood has just increased. Like, holy shit. Her oppression simulator is just fucking burning out every graphics card it's ever ran right now. Oh, it's so hard, It's so hard for white people. Black women have taken every single position of power in this country. Every CEO is a black woman. Every time I turn on the TV, black people are on the television too. I can't stand it.
Who are going to these universities, you realize you're supporting the very evil individuals. When they say decolonize, what do you think that means? And they've been holding up those signs for a decade.
And when you basically have the framework of colonization, you can't think of any other goals or aspirations outside of more colonization, right? It's like, hey, by the way, we kind of did like a colonization and genocide of indigenous people. It's like, oh, that was bad. Oh, that was bad. Yeah, that was bad. Are they going to do that to us now in revenge? Is that what comes next? Are they going to slaughter every white person in Canada and America? Is that what they're going to do? No, actually, the majority of the landback movement is actually advocating that the actual treaties that were signed by colonizers be upheld and the land rightfully returned to them so they can become stewards of the land in the same way that any nation state should be able to have control over their own autonomy. And actually, they've specifically and very explicitly said that they do not want white people or the descendants of white colonizers to have to go back to Europe. They've actually said that they just want to have land title back and control over that. If, say, oil projects or resources want to be extracted, then they would be the ones to be able to get the benefits from that, and they would also be the ones to be able to grab taxation from people living on the land, things like that. If anything, the land back victory here in Vancouver locally for the Squamish Nation has resulted in them getting past a lot of red tape for building because, no longer are they going to be under the purview of a lot of the restrictions that are put on, not for building code itself, but for the ability to develop low-income housing. So that's what they're going to be building, a massive low-income housing project, which, again, is like, it's not white people go home in any way, shape, or form, But again, if you just got it through that lens, if the only way you can see the world is constantly just to view it as like, oh, what? Colonization? Yeah, that's what happened. Oh, so...
And I'm like, and just that, like, well, all that too, and it basically
just a vague hand gesture everywhere.
But it's sort of where my hand.
Yeah, silly Native Americans with their actual proper titles. Yeah, don't ever look at the treaties that were signed. By the way, don't ever look at where exactly the land was properly divided and given to them and then taken from them once again. Don't do that.
And this pointing.
to be
Far as
fair,
the eye can see.
these are just leftist activists saying this.
Oh yeah, these are the same people who fight for property rights all the time. But when it comes to land back, it's like, well, what's the land? Oh, it's this. And it's like, what vague hand gestures. Like, no, you're literally on stolen land, according to the treaties that the colonizers signed.
Right.
And so I'm not speaking on behalf of Native Americans who are concerned about what land they may have had burial, cemeteries or whatever on. But the activists' view was all of it. Just everything you can see belongs to them and should be reverted. And it's like, well, hold on, that's not reality, okay? People live here. We're not going to, we're not going to go to some dude's house in Pittsburgh and be like, well, I'm sorry, man.
And that's why the landback movement is explicitly not calling for that. That's not what they've said. It's not part of it. They've never once said, hey, descendants of white people, you now have to go back to Europe. It's that the land, as you agreed, as per the treaties, it's why you win constitutional battles up here in Canada when it gets to the Supreme Court. As per the treaties, it seems like, yes, that title was given to them for this land.
200 years ago, this land belonged to somebody else, so it's gone now. That's insane.
Not only that, but I mean, think about it this way. The whole claim is just based upon what you got there first. I mean, does the first Bedouin who arrives at an oasis own the oasis?
Then your claim is might makes right. And if that's true, America, I mean, why aren't you just doing daily colonization? I mean, you could just invade Canada tomorrow. There's no way the Canadian Army is going to be able to withstand an American invasion. Every time people joke about that, I'm like, oh God, no, please. And then just conquer it, and then be like, oh, what? These Canadians say they got here first. Apparently, the Indigenous people got here before them, and we conquered both. So we win more land.
That there was another Indian tribe that they slaughtered. They were just migrants slaughtering one another until the white...
So just the unbridled racism in Coulter here, I just want to provide some context. No one has ever said, including Indigenous people, that they were not warring factions between tribes. There absolutely was. There was war. There wasn't the North Atlantic slave trade. That wasn't something they were doing. There wasn't a massive capitalist profit incentive to maintain a large amount of people who were enslaved. That was not a thing they were doing. Like, whenever you're like, oh, well, they were basically barbarians, and then they were just cannibals, and they were eating each other, and then just genociding each other constantly, and finally we came in, we civilized, and we brought NyQuil chicken to that part of the world, and now everyone is happy to consume their NyQuil chicken. Never eat NyQuil chicken, and it will hurt you, and it can kill you.
Man came with his guns and won a war, and that's how territory is taken. How do you think Israel was created?
Not just that. When the Native Americans were warring with each other to take land, white men showed up and warred with each other over that land, and you had colonial inter-European conflict in the New World. It's just the world is...
But only...
I love how they just say a couple things and then just let that settle. We'll just let that thing I just said in there settle for a little while. Yeah. Why do Canadians speak French again? Why is that? I don't know. Either way.
White or Western, whatever you want to say, European. I mean, there's, I generally like white people, but one thing.
Oh no, Anne, have you reached levels of racism where you're pulling out the white racism, where you're going to start to stratify different kinds of whites, where it's just like, well, I mean, we got to admit that there are a couple of those, unsavory types, Roma people mostly, but like, less desirable. They're just made of poorer stock, and obviously, and the Swedes, we have to be honest about here. Like, I'm sorry, but like, it's just reality. Like, Jesus, Anne. Well, I've run out of my normal deck of racism. We got to do the different kinds of whites now.
No, every other ethnic group, we're the best. Hispanics are the best. It's not even Hispanics. It's Mexicans, Ecuadorians. We crush, we kill. No, only white people. We suck.
Again, when they're just always dancing around a thing, isn't it weird how you keep saying white people, like you're grouping every different group of people into one giant group? It's like, which ones do you mean? Do you mean like Italians, Danish, Finnish? Who are we talking about here? Swedish, British, Australian, Canadian? What type of white people? And why are you making all white people as this general force? And why are you associating it directly with the West?
Here's the dangerous thing about the left's ideology. It is only applied to the United States because when you bring the same concepts to Europe, things get really weird. Because
strange. Kind of seemed like a lot of leftists have had a pretty principled stance when it came to Ukraine, and those same leftists are taking a principled stance when it comes to Palestine. That's why there's suddenly a lot of people being like, I don't understand what's happening. What's going on? I mean, the United States liberals are supporting Israel, and the leftists are not. What's going on? It's almost as if they have moral clarity or something.
They talk about indigenous rights. So what do you end up with? You end up with white identitarian groups in Europe saying indigenous rights. We completely agree.
They're like, thank you so much for this.
Yeah, they hold the signs saying.
You mean the same white identitarian groups that you've promoted in numerous of your fucking shows? This whole trip to Sweden, where it's like, oh yeah, he was just there to examine extremism, Muslim extremism, but it's like he did that by interviewing a lot of fucking fascists. Didn't identify them as fascists or extremists, by the way. Just left that up there for people to figure out on their own.
Indigenous people's rights. And they make the same arguments the left makes here as to why they oppose immigration in Europe. And it's like, well, okay, I mean, that's the left's argument,
I'd rather
right?
take Israel as our lodestar. If we could do 1/10 of what they do. Oh, did you see my proposed solution for what's happening in the Middle East? I think it's really perfect. We take all their Palestinians.
I was like, here's going to be just the most horrifying fucking bile that any human being could possibly posture with, right?
Take all our illegals. They get drywalling.
Yeah,
you don't have a problem.
Well, you know, it's interesting how they keep
Old fucking, like, this is 1990s tier shit, you know? When you get that racist comedian like, oh, anytime I want to meet a Mexican, I just go to a Home Depot. Lol, keck. Funny, right? Yeah, anyways. What's going on? White people are really suffering from racism, aren't they?
describing Israel as this kind of occupying power without asking, well, wait a minute. How did this region start out? Well, first of all, the Jews were there first. It was their land. Then they go into the diaspora. The Romans smash them and they take...
Oh, I was like, are we going... Oh, biblical, right. It's in the Bible. It's in the Bible. Yep, can't forget about that. Yes.
Off. Then you get a bunch of Muslim farmers and sheep herders over there. But Islam comes around in the 7th century and conquers that whole region, which was, by the way, almost all Christian. Jordan was Christian, Syria was Christian. So these are Christian lands forcibly conquered by Islam. And yet some...
So what he's referring to is the Ottoman Empire. And again, we're going back to fucking the Crusades right now. This is just wild. So, I mean, are there any true Romans who are going to stand up and take back Italy? I hope so. I hope so, because goddamn, I mean, come on, that's your rightful place. What's going on?
Somehow Islam gets out of this sort of reputation of being an occupier, and they're somehow able to pin that on the Jews. I mean, it's just a kind of an amazing sleight of hand.
I mean, yeah, I do not know a whole lot about the history. I do know that...
But here we go.
That when I grew up going to Catholic school, many of these cities were Jewish cities, like where, you know, Jerusalem, etc. And just based on that concept alone, should we go back and say, oh,
So again, the Bible. The source is the Bible.
oh no,
Do they know the Ottoman Empire doesn't exist anymore, and that it was actually the British who took that over afterwards, and what occurred there before it was designated as you know, the Israeli state?
right? Or Judea, whatever it was.
I mean, when I was in Israel, this was last December, it's really fascinating because they're doing all this archaeological work. And they're finding out that many of these artifacts are coming up now that are validating the Hebrew scriptures. I mean, people for a long time think about it. There was no independent evidence that Jeremiah or, you know, these prophets of the old David or Saul ever existed. But suddenly you pull out a medallion, or you pull out a writing and it's like King Saul, King Solomon. You suddenly realize, wow, there's the historicity of the Old Testament is being affirmed by secular modern Israeli archaeologists. Now, what does that have to do with what we're talking about? Well, it's establishing the historic claim of the Jews to Israel.
Well, actually, I went to a coin store and they had one of the old...
If all of this was 100% historically accurate, you know, down to every statement that they've made so far, does any of that justify what is taking place right now to children in Gaza? Because that is the topic, right? You're talking about how the political left apparently hates Israel. They're all deeply anti-Semitic, and they all hate Jewish people as well. And that's obviously just very anti-Semitic itself to conflate Jewish people with the state of Israel and its actions. But either way, we're here. What does that have to say about the children getting bombed right now? Right?
Old coins that was minted around the time of the birth of Christ and is believed... I don't know if the coin that I bought was one of the coins used by St. Casper, but it was the same currency used by St. Casper, and that's...
But did you buy it on eBay? Was it certified? It was like Thirsty Joe's Historic Emporium. Definitely a coin used by St. Casper.
I don't... Well, my understanding is after...
Signed by St. Casper.
Researching about it, buying the coin, it's verified, historical, in like a box and sealed and graded and all that stuff. That quite literally, yes, there was a guy. He was given currency. It was minted for him so they could fund his trip. Don't know if that specific coin was used by him, but around this time, I gifted that to Seamus because I thought it was, you know, it meant something historically. But yeah, generally, this stuff happened, right? Whether or not you believe
What's the story have to do with anything? I got scammed by an eBay fucking selling me historic coins, so I just gave it to Seamus.
in the greater faith-based narratives of the religions or whatever is something else. But these people were here. They did these things.
Exactly.
It was wild because, like, you know, I bought an NFT that apparently was owned by Julius Caesar, but like they couldn't verify whether or not it was actually him who minted the NFT. But like they said that they had verification, and then I got it in the form of another NFT, and they're like, that URL checks out. It looks pretty solid. But like, I don't know. You know, it's just like these things happen. It's hard to know.
I mean, that's the point.
Control it, and they're the civilized force there now.
Yeah.
But the left
Listen to the language, by the way. The other side is barbarians. They're inhuman. And now the civilized society is there to be able to control and police them.
is always against civilization.
And the left is inconsistent. I mean, there is a lot of...
Yes, if there's one thing the left hates, it's civilization. Always, you know. Even the examples they'll pull up, if they're going to talk about, say, like, they hate China and they hate the USSR. And they'll bring up those two, and then they'll never talk about the fact that, well, why is it that China has the fastest growing economy? And it turns out the whole game of capitalism, because I don't consider them to be communists, but you do. Your side does. But, you know, they're destroying your ass at the game you're all supposed to love. What's going on there? You know, what's taking place? Oh, well, that's not the communism. That's something else. Here's co-host Moonlord. If Palestine becomes the 51st state, could we make it a vacation spot that is super high tech and lives in harmony with its surrounding neighbors? Got ratioed on that one. Guess people weren't huge on the whole colonization project. I'm following Moonlord. That's an unfollow right there. You're no longer funny or cute, Moonlord. You're just fucking horrifying, like the rest of the fucking
Palestinian parent who's telling his kid to go throw the rock.
Yeah.
And you can tell the soldiers are really uncomfortable because the parent is egging his kid on, and he's telling the Israeli guy, shoot the kid, shoot the kid. It's almost like he's looking for a propaganda with his own kid. I mean, it's almost inconceivable. A point about these donors, though, because it doesn't make sense that you got all these rich guys who are doing super well. They're multimillionaires. Why they would fund, quote, barbarism? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. Why are they continuing to give to these universities? And I think it is because the left has sort of captured the trophies of high culture, the Lincoln Center. And so in a capitalist society, you've got people who do really well, they make a lot of money, but they always have...
What the fuck are you talking about? What extreme material power does the left have? Y'all have shows that get Koch brothers funding. Sorry, Koch brother. But like, holy shit, you get all the fucking direct funding from industry and capitalism you could ever hope for. Every single one of these places is like, oh, I'm just setting up a casual, you know, maybe a GoFundMe or, you know, some kind of a Kickstarter in order to do a documentary. Wild. Oh, it just got like $400,050. Oh, wild how people have so much interest in that. It came from like 10 donors, but here we go. Oh, I'm just going to be launching like an independent news site that actually tells the truth about the left and how climate change isn't too bad. Whoa, weird. It just got like $1 million on GoFundMe. Yeah, it's strange how that happens. Well, either way, yeah, really cool that all these fucking independent rich people want to support me.
This little anxiety that they don't have culture. And so they want to buy culture. And the way you buy culture is you give money to Harvard, and then you get on the board. Or you get on the board of the Lincoln Center. And you don't really care what they stand for, what they do. You walk into the museum, you can't understand any of the art. But the point is, you don't want to be seen as a guy who's a barbarian and a Philistine, and you don't know what art is. So you're like, I need to be on the board of the Lincoln Center, and then I will be seen as not only a rich
plus
guy,
one
but a
culture.
very
Achievement
cultured
unlocked.
guy.
So
There's something to that, but they also, most of them did go to the temples of high culture like Harvard and Yale. And I don't know, I see too many Black Lives Matter signs. And what's that one? In this house, we believe, hung up, you know, in the Hamptons.
She attended Cornell University. She was a part of Delta Gamma National Sorority. She graduated cum laude from Cornell in 1984.
About civilized society. They don't need the police. They live a safe life, so they have the luxury of...
Yes, liberals and liberal institutions, famous defunders and critics and abolitionists of the police.
pretending to support...
Of promoting
These
violence
are-
in
these
someone
are-
else's life.
Castro,
These are-
Black Lives Matter.
They're unlearned, unworldly, naive,
Like, what are they? Are they part of the upper echelon and the upper crust and the highly educated upper class, or are they simply unlearned? Like, what's going on here?
Sophisticated individuals who blindly march along with whatever they think the narrative is so they can fit in. Many of these people know what they're doing is wrong, but are scared to speak out against it. Those are cowards, and they provide donations to this. But I think the simple thing is, you know, you made the joke about, you know, Palestine will take all the Palestinians, they can have the illegal immigrants. A joke we often make is, we'll take the Venezuelans if they take our leftists. Because the people in Venezuela fleeing leftism, at the very least, will... But it's a joke, right? And so the issue is,
They voted for it.
I love when you got to explain. Right, but that was humor, satire.
Like it was imposed on them in Venezuela.
And now they're running from it.
They voted for it.
But the leftists in the United States have never been to Venezuela. And the funny thing, you take an American leftist and bring them to Caracas, they'll likely be murdered. When I went down I went down to Venezuela.
Yeah, just almost on the spot, instantaneously. As soon as they get off the plane, yeah, it's basically just instant murder. Yeah, that's how it happens.
Oh yeah, I went down to Venezuela, I think 9 years ago with Vice.
But then you identified yourself as a milquetoast fence sitter, right? And then they're like, oh, we were going to murder you on the spot, as is the tradition, to murder anyone who's on the left. But luckily, you're a milquetoast fence sitter, so you get to survive.
And we were covering the uprising that was happening. It was interesting. It was the wealthier individuals protesting against the government because their lives were being destroyed by these policies. And 4 or 5 times, someone would walk up to me and go, "Where are you from?"
I love that. Yeah, okay. There's a lot of criticisms of the Maduro government and how he's actually tried to be authoritarian and take away the possibility of having people contest his administration. But if you're talking about the centralized nationalization of their oil production and then utilizing all of that money to help with social programs, by every conceivable metric, that was a massive, massive victory for the poorest Venezuelans in the country. Literacy rates suddenly climbed. Infant mortality rates fucking plummeted. Education rates soared. Like, yes, it was a good thing, actually. It actually had a lot of benefits to a lot of very poor Venezuelan people. Like, it's weird. We went there and, like, the people who were in opposition to these policies were, like, rich people. I guess that's the exact same thing that's happening here, right? I could just one-to-one transfer the situation. Then came, all these American embargoes on their oil production and buying and selling their oil. And then all of a sudden, what did that do?
And I know what happens if I say America. So I would say Vice magazine. And they would say, no, where are you from? I'm like, oh, Vice is a Canadian magazine. And they'd walk away. If I said I'm an American.
So I thought you said they killed, like, the left as soon as you got out. And it was like, well, no, because I was very clear to say that I worked for a Canadian magazine. So they knew. Do you enjoy the Serfs but prefer not to have to use your eyeballs? Many are saying this. Well, we've got the solution for you. It's the Serf Times in podcast form. Available on most major podcasting networks now. If you enjoy it, please consider leaving a good review and feedback because it really helps the show out, apparently, and it's free, just like the podcast.
Thank you so much for watching, everybody. This show is produced by amazing people like you, and if you want to help us out, please consider donating over at patreon.com/theserfs. The show is made possible thanks to Amazing Fletch, Anna Loves Riley, Ariane McCarthy, Cheryl Alvarez, Doug Cady, Everything Important, Hagbard Celine, Laminia Panza, Matthew Scarborough, Multimondi, Omni, Peanut Butter Blondie, Political Pappy, Quiet 185, Rachel K, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Ruby K, Sir Nickus, Spinach Monster, Stellar Vision, Sebastian Demo, Tech Tink, Trevbot EXE, Words Greenwood, and not to mention all of the amazing and fabulous people you now see before you.